The Woolworths boss quits unexpectedly after losing his cool on TV. Wages grow at their fastest pace in 14 years, and the owner of Westfield says the number of shoppers is back above pre-COVID levels. Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It is Thursday, the 22nd of February, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show today, you have an interview coming up with Commonwealth Bank's Vivek Dhar.
Yes, we sure do. Vivek is an expert in all things commodity, or all commodities really. We talked to him about what's happening in iron ore prices, coal prices, nickel. What else? We talk about lithium and we talk about uranium. Then we talk about super cycles. I love chatting to Vivek because he teaches me something every time. And we're getting results through. So we had Rio Tinto, and then earlier in the week we had BHP, and we've had the lithium miners and some of the coal miners. What Vivek does is tell us the story behind the numbers. He tells us why commodity prices are rising or falling, and it's really fascinating.
What I love about these chats with Vivek is that I reckon you could pluck an obscure commodity out and you could throw it at him and he would still be able to answer it. I reckon he knows just about everything there is to know about commodities. He is a fantastic interview guest.
He sure is. In fact, let's try that next time we get Vivek on.
Yes.
We'll go to the periodic table, find some very obscure metal or alkaline or whatever they call it. I don't know. Never did chemistry, and just ask him about it.
Let's ask him about the soft commodities that you've taught me about before. Isn't it like orange juice and things?
Yeah, soft commodities are really cool. Agriculture, basically. Very cool.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Maybe next time. But today's interview with Vivek is well worth a listen just because it is basically your kind of your cheat sheet to everything you need to know about those commodities that you listed and their prices and the forces affecting them. It is a great chat. But the main story this morning, Sean, the CEO of Woolworths, Brad Banducci, stepped down unexpectedly yesterday, just days after storming out of a Four Corners interview on ABC and ahead of the supermarket's appearance at a Senate inquiry into grocery prices.
Mr. Banducci, who has been in the job for 8 years and is pretty well liked by the investment community, stressed it was a retirement rather than a resignation, and Woolies chair Scott Perkins said it had nothing to do with Mr. Banducci's appearance on Four Corners earlier this week. Maybe. I got to say, the timing is awful for Australia's largest retailer, which is under all sorts of pressure and accusations of price gouging. Having a CEO say he is stepping down just looks bad, even if he intends to stay in the job until September. He will be replaced by Woolies veteran Amanda Bardwell, and she'll have a baptism of fire, not unlike Vanessa Hudson faced at Qantas when Alan Joyce stepped down. Public and regulatory scrutiny is likely to go on for months and possibly years at the retailer. Now, Mr. Banducci appeared on ABC's Four Corners on Monday night. He was highly critical of former ACCC boss Rod Sims. He then asked for his comments to be deleted, to which the reporter said they were on the record. He then stood up and left, saying he'd had enough. Everything in front of the camera. It was not a good look.
No, it certainly wasn't. Sean, there's plenty to unpack in all of this. I suppose, is it good news for investors? But also, what about customers? How do they fit into all of this?
Yeah, good questions. Woolies' share price fell 7% after the announcement, so investors aren't happy. Mr. Banducci is highly regarded. Mind you, the supermarket's net loss of $781 million during the December half, thanks to a massive $1.7 billion impairment on the New Zealand business, wouldn't have helped that share price move yesterday. Above the line, or not including those write-downs, sales were up though, profit margins were better. So all in all, it wasn't a bad corporate result yesterday. So most of that fall is probably on the back of Brad Banducci leaving. For customers, there is so much scrutiny on that sector at the moment that growing profits for the big supermarkets is going to be tough. There'll be pressure to lower prices for customers or to pay suppliers more. There could well be government codes introduced. At the moment, there's a grocery code which they're supposed to abide by, but it doesn't have any teeth whatsoever. The government could well and truly bring regulation into that market. All that should put pressure to lower prices for customers, or at least pay suppliers more. Not sure if the customer will win out of that one, but someone will, which probably isn't the shareholder.
All right. There was so much focus on Woolworths in the last 24 hours. How did local markets perform, I suppose, more broadly yesterday?
So much going on at the moment, Michael. The S&P ASX 200 closed down 0.7% to 7,608 points, led lower by consumer staple stocks. Now, that's basically Woolies' fall. The tech sector did pretty well, particularly WiseTech Global. More on that shortly. Plenty of corporate action and results going on. The big miners fell sharply on the back of lower iron ore prices. Telstra was down 1.5%. Commonwealth Bank was off 2%. A bit of news around a French building materials producer is exploring a potential acquisition of CSR, according to a report on Bloomberg. The two companies have held initial talks and are working with advisors to reach a deal. The report says CSR's share price jumped 17% yesterday, best of the top 200. Domino's Pizza Enterprises has cut its dividend and says there's been little improvement in sales in its struggling European business after reporting a 9% slide in net profit for the 6 months to the end of January. One market, Michael, that is doing reasonably well is Japan, where same-store sales for the first 7 weeks are up 7%. That is on the back of demand for something called the cheese volcano pizza. Wow.
Sorry, what?
The cheese volcano pizza.
Okay.
My arteries are hardening as I say the phrase.
Oh, I'm looking at it now. Have you seen a picture of this thing?
No, is it good?
Yeah, it has what looks like a little volcano in the middle. It is like a regular pizza, and then it's got like this little well of kind of cheese in the middle.
Oh, yes, you're right. It's almost like a dipping pizza.
A fondue kind of.
A fondue. I like a fondue. Japanese are going mad for it. That's what they said yesterday anyway.
That's great.
And Corporate Travel Management's worth a mention. Its share price fell 20% yesterday after the group missed half-year earnings forecast and lowered expectations for the full year. The slowdown in the economy and a stagnant contract with the UK government were blamed.
And what's happening in international markets?
China stocks hit multi-week highs yesterday as confidence grows that Beijing will do more to help the economy. Tensions in the Middle East pushed up the price of Brent crude. Gold's also up a bit. The Aussie dollar flying at 65.7 US cents. I reckon that's gone from 65.4 to 65.7 US cents in just 24 hours, Michael. Incredible move.
That is a seismic shift.
It is for the dollar, given it's done nothing for months and months.
Indeed. All right, we'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, annual wages grew at 4.2% last year, their fastest pace since March 2009, and well above the pre-pandemic average of 2.5%, according to figures released by the Bureau of Stats.
Australian wages growth, as measured by the Wage Price Index, rose 0.9% in the December quarter, with both private and public sector wages up by about the same amount. Normally, private sector wages contribute about 80% of the increase because it's just a much bigger piece of the labour market pie. However, in the December quarter, the public sector contributed a much larger part of the increase, about a third of it, particularly in sectors like health, education and aged care. As inflation has slowed and wages have increased, there's finally been growth in real wages, just 0.1% in the December quarter, but it's the beginning and it should start easing some of the cost of living pressures. People are actually able to buy more with their pay packet. The result is close to the Reserve Bank's forecast and suggests that wages growth probably has peaked. In terms of rates, the figures support the case for rates on hold for the next few months.
Sean, Prime Minister Anthony Albanese has dampened speculation that there might be an election later this year, saying he supported 4-year terms and announcing the 2025 budget will be brought forward to March.
Plenty going on. The significance of the budget being brought forward is that it will then allow the government to outline its fiscal plan and then call an election, which seems to be the current intention. A poll must be held by the end of May next year, and with a minimum 33-day campaign, an early May budget isn't possible. Mr. Albanese therefore has brought forward the budget, and so the good money is on holding out for the full 3 years. The Prime Minister also lamented the fact that the federal government term is only 3 years. Now all state governments have 4-year terms. The feds at one point, I think it was Bob Hawke, he held a referendum in the late 80s about a 4-year term. It was soundly defeated. I don't think any state voted for it. But to wrap that story up, basically it looks like the next federal election poll will be April, May next year.
Yeah, but when's the wedding going to be, Sean?
Oh, Well, maybe that's why we're pushing out the poll till next year, because Albo and his lovely partner will be Jodie Hayden. It was coming to me. It really was. Anthony Albanese and Jodie Hayden with that lovely ring. They might be on a honeymoon, sort of Scott Morrison style at the end of the year.
The federal government will start auditing landing slots at Sydney Airport and force the airlines to explain why they've cancelled flights.
So only a limited number of flights can land at the airport, the country's busiest, because of curfews, noise restrictions, that type of thing. It means those rights, known as slots, are highly sought after, particularly in peak periods. The federal government wants to make sure the carriers aren't manipulating the system to keep control of lucrative landing rights. At this stage, it's only an audit. Infrastructure Minister Catherine King yesterday said she did not plan to change the current 80-20 system that allows the carriers to keep the slots as long as they're used 80% of the time. She'll also not allow more planes to land per hour, except in exceptional circumstances, such as when storms are around and stuff like that. But just the fact that the government is auditing this will give greater transparency about whether that 80-20, whether the cancellations are occurring in those peak periods or otherwise.
It's just staying in the airline industry, Sean, Qantas has appointed John Mullen, the former Telstra chair and current chair of Brambles and Treasury Wine Estates, to be chair of the national carrier. He is going to be busy.
Well, he'll replace Richard Goyder in one of the most blue-chip jobs in corporate Australia. Mr. Mullen did say he'll be adjusting his other professional obligations to fit in the Qantas role. The announcement marks the end of a tumultuous time for Qantas, which has now got a new CEO and will be getting a new chair. Mr. Goyder, former boss of Wesfarmers, came under enormous criticism for allowing former Qantas CEO Alan Joyce to sell $17 million of his own shares weeks after the airline had received a second notice regarding an investigation into allegations that it sold tickets on tens of thousands of flights it had already cancelled. Just one comment on this, Michael. John Mullen is highly regarded, no doubt about that. But really, do we always have to have the same bunch of directors getting the top jobs? Seriously? So John Mullen has chaired Telstra. He chairs Brambles and Treasury Wine Estates. He'll probably drop or maybe not be chair of one of those. Who knows what's going to happen? He's going to be chairing Qantas. I'm sure he's capable, but how about we just renew the director pool a little?
Yeah, we've done some interviews on this in the past about the number of directors that then end up with kind of multiple roles across multiple companies and about the need to kind of continually kind of refresh to get some new perspectives and new opinions and just kind of keep that generational refreshment coming through.
But generation, gender, life experience, perhaps, kind of cultural background. It's astounding that the same names keep coming up again and again and again. And this is no respect to John Mullen, who clearly is an incredibly capable individual.
Yeah.
But man, how about just someone new?
Tell you what, I reckon this will be coming up in the weekend edition. I just have a feeling that you might end up kind of busting this one out. And it could be one where we see Sean Aylmer getting a wee bit passionate.
I like. I reckon Adam Lang, our judge, will love it too, just quietly. So I'm going to bags that one.
Oh, yeah, well played. I probably should have seen that one coming. National Australia Bank's cash earnings fell 17% during the December quarter, with a big jump in overdue mortgage repayments.
Cash earnings totaled $1.8 billion as the economy slowed, though outgoing Chief Executive Officer Ross McEwen said the result is sound and the bank's showing good momentum. NAB's net interest margin, the difference between what it pays out on deposits and receives on loans, rose slightly, which is actually in contrast to the Commonwealth Bank. But the bottom line was hit by a higher effective tax rate. Now, three of the big four banks, National Australia Bank, ANZ and Westpac, report on a September-March basis. Commonwealth Bank has reported already on that December basis. So we only get quarterlies from those three, ANZ, Westpac and NAB, this month.
Rio Tinto has declared a higher than expected dividend after announcing a full year $15.4 billion profit on the back of stronger iron ore prices.
The result included a $1.2 billion impairment to the company's Queensland alumina refineries. Now, the profit's a big number, but the net result is a 5-year low. Australian iron ore provided Rio with close to 92% of its earnings, as prices for the steel ingredient proved stronger than expected. But even that was no match for the record commodity prices witnessed in 2021. And Rio's profits are now about half what they were a couple of years ago. Also yesterday, Rio said it will buy 80% of the power generated from a new 1,400 megawatt wind farm in Queensland. It's the second major renewable power purchase agreement Rio has struck within the last month. The deals will make Rio the biggest industrial buyer of renewables in Australia.
Scentre Group, the owner of the Westfield shopping centre empire across Australasia, said sales are up over the past few months and visitations are back well above pre-COVID levels.
Finally, Scentre announced a 42% drop in net profit for 2023 due to write-downs in the value of its properties. That's been going on with the REITs non-stop this earnings season. But overall, sales were up 6.4% across the business to a new record. Occupancy in the Westfield malls is now at 99.2%, pretty good, including 307 new brands in the shopping centres last year. Customer visitation to the 42 centres was 512 million people last year, up 32 million, not 512 million people. That's not true. 512 million visits. Oh, but you and I probably contribute to quite a few of those, Michael.
I suspect so.
Yeah. Scentre Chief Executive Elliot Rusanow said Westfield malls were doing better than other retailers because, in part, malls are being used as free entertainment. The group share price finished up about 3% yesterday. Good to see that people are back in the malls.
Indeed. Now, WiseTech Global's share price jumped 11% yesterday, hitting a new all-time high after the freight software company announced a better-than-expected half-year profit.
WiseTech's share price is up more than 50% since its low in early November. Now, back then it said a bunch of acquisitions would hurt profit margins. It was sold off big time. Yesterday, WiseTech said it expects margins to improve in the second half and that it has signed new contracts with 3 large global freight forwarders. One of the interesting facts out of yesterday, Michael, well, I thought it was the response from analysts. Basically, the Houthi attacks in the Red Sea means commercial trips have to be rerouted. And that's actually good business for WiseTech because they track individual pieces of cargo, and on those longer journeys, people want to track them more. So the Red Sea attacks actually is good business for WiseTech Global. There you go.
Isn't that extraordinary? The way kind of geopolitical events can have an impact on a Australian. I was about to say a little Australian company. WiseTech Global is not a little Australian company anymore.
No, it's not.
Now, international news, Sean, this story is pretty scary, really. The US has told allies that Russia could deploy a nuclear weapon or a mock warhead into space as early as this year.
Bloomberg is reporting that Russia is developing a space-based capability to knock out satellites using a nuclear weapon. A nuclear warhead in orbit would violate the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, to which Russia is a signatory. The development comes after the US House Intelligence Committee chair warned last week of a grave but unspecified security threat from Russia. President Joe Biden later said that the Kremlin had been developing an anti-satellite space weapon that doesn't pose a threat, or at least a direct threat, to human lives. Now, Vladimir Putin responded saying that Russia always has been categorically against the deployment of nuclear weapons in space. Yeah, I don't think Vladimir Putin's word holds a lot at the moment, so it's a scary development there.
Yeah, it certainly is. All right, now to something a little bit more positive. Commonwealth Bank's commodity expert, Vivek Dar, your Fear and Greed daily interview guest, up next.
He's not that much more positive. Vivek's a bit down on some of those commodities. We do talk about uranium doing better, but nickel, he talks about how it's a structural change. Lithium's more cyclical, and we also talk about coal and iron ore and things. It's a great chat just because he gives us the reasons behind some of these results that the miners are producing this half year.
It's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. And if you haven't had a listen as well to our sister podcast, How Do They Afford That? Yet as well, check that one out. I'll put a link in today's show notes as well. This week's episode is all about debt recycling, essentially an investment strategy that could potentially allow you to invest while you still have a mortgage. It is worth a listen, always worth as well getting professional advice before you make investment decisions. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Thursday, the 22nd of February, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and don't forget to join us online on Instagram and TikTok, LinkedIn, X and Facebook, and check out some of the videos we've been posting online lately. Great to see a few more people following us and joining in some of the fun. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.